This is not here to hype you up. It is here to condition you. Motivation comes and goes. Moods shift, but conditioning reshapes how you behave when things get hard. People don't usually lose because they lack ability. They lose because they never trained for the moment. An untrained mind reacts on instinct. It freezes under pressure. It hesitates exactly when it shouldn't. It hands the wheel over to emotion, to outside events, to other people. And once your mind is no longer yours to steer, everything else starts slipping too. Life rarely tests how smart you are first. It tests how composed you are. It tests your discipline and your ability to hold steady when things aren't going your way. If your mind hasn't been trained for that, those are exactly the moments that will expose the gap. This is built for those exact moments. When pressure builds in your chest, when emotion tries to take the wheel, when a single reaction could cost you respect, money, a relationship, or your own self-trust. Winning isn't about being right all the time. It's about holding your composure long enough to make the right call. That's the essence of mental conditioning. Not hype, not affirmations, not positive thinking slogans. Actual training. Just like muscles need resistance to grow, the mind needs structure, discipline, and repetition. Skip that, and your mind defaults to reacting. A reactive mind chases comfort, avoids discomfort, and falls apart under uncertainty. A trained mind works differently. It pauses, it watches, it decides. That pause is where real power sits. This is meant to help you build that pause, not as a one-off, but as a habit. You don't need a personality overhaul. You don't need to switch off your emotions. You need stability. Staying calm under pressure isn't a personality quirk. It's a skill you build. Discipline isn't something you're born with or without. It's something you construct through standards and repetition. Clear thinking in the middle of chaos isn't luck. It's what happens when a trained mind filters out noise and locks onto what matters. In every scenario, there's a person who stays in control and a person who reacts. The controlled one doesn't always win right away, but they hold their position. The reactive one might feel justified or expressive in the moment, but they give up leverage. This is about making that shift. From reacting to directing, from impulse to intention, from emotion-driven choices to disciplined ones. Across the next several chapters, you'll go through 8 core training principles. Not abstract theory, but practical skills you can start using today. Staying calm under pressure, controlling your reactions, building mental stamina through discomfort, thinking clearly when everything feels chaotic, reshaping the voice in your head instead of obeying it, and showing up consistently even when the motivation isn't there. This isn't about perfection. It's about becoming dependable, dependable under stress, dependable in uncertainty, dependable when it counts most. Because who you are in the hard moments is who you actually are. Train your mind, and situations stop feeling like threats. You stop asking, "What if this goes wrong?" and start telling yourself, "Whatever happens, I'll stay in control." That single shift changes everything. There's no shortcut promised here, no overnight transformation. What's offered instead is more useful. A system, a way of thinking, responding, and showing up. Passive listening changes nothing. Active listening, paired with real application, raises your internal standards. And when your standards rise, your behavior catches up. you'll notice the same core ideas repeated in different forms throughout. That repetition is deliberate, because training itself is repetition. You don't get strong from one workout. You don't build discipline from one decision. You don't build control from understanding something once. It's built by returning to it again and again. So don't rush through this. Let the ideas sink in. Pay attention to where your current habits clash with what you're hearing. That friction is part of the process. By the end, you won't be a completely different person, but you'll be more grounded, more deliberate, more in control. And that's genuinely where winning begins. Not with hype, not with confidence, but with a conditioned mind. Let's get into it. Chapter 1. Master your inner world. First, winning doesn't begin externally. It begins in the place most people never bother training. Their internal world. Long before results show up in your work, relationships, or decisions, they show up in your thinking. You typically lose a situation internally before you ever lose it in the real world. Most people miss this because the internal loss is silent. It happens the instant doubt breaks your focus, when emotion overrides judgment, when hesitation replaces clear thinking. By the time the outward failure appears, the internal battle is already over. That's why training your mind isn't optional. It's the foundation everything else rests on. An unstable inner world sinks even the best strategy. A chaotic inner world burns through every opportunity that comes its way. The first law of mental conditioning is straightforward. You have to win internally before you can win externally. Too many people try to patch outcomes without addressing the mindset that produces them. They chase better habits while ignoring the mental patterns that sabotage those habits under stress. They want confidence without doing the work that actually earns it. Confidence without control is brittle. Discipline without clarity burns you out. Ambition without emotional regulation turns into self-sabotage. Your inner world is the operating system running everything else. When it's fragile, even minor setbacks feel unbearable. When it's solid, chaos becomes something you can work with. Watch how people respond when things go sideways. Some panic, some complain, some point fingers, some shut down completely. None of that is really personality. It's evidence of an untrained inner world. A trained mind doesn't switch emotion off. It organizes it. It builds a gap between what happens and how you respond. It slows things down just enough for a real choice to exist. That gap is everything, because the second you react on autopilot, you've handed control over to your emotions, to other people, to circumstances you barely understand. Winning internally means taking that control back. It means becoming someone who isn't easily knocked off course, not because life gets easier, but because you get steadier. This steadiness isn't something you're handed. It's something you build. Most people let outside noise dictate their internal state. Headlines, social feeds, other people's moods, unplanned problems. That's living in reaction mode, and reaction mode is costly. Your standards slip. Patience evaporates. Long-term thinking gets traded for short-term relief. You say things you'll regret instead of things you'll respect. Getting out of reaction mode for good means choosing to actively manage your mental state instead of letting it be managed for you. That starts with noticing. You can't control what you don't notice. Most people never pay attention to their own inner dialogue. The tension building in their body, how fast their focus scatters under stress. Training starts with observing, without judging what you see. Notice when your mind races ahead. Notice when it spirals into worst-case thinking. Notice when it reaches for comfort instead of forward motion. Observation isn't weakness. It's the first real act of discipline. Once you notice, you can interrupt. And that interruption is where the actual training happens. When you feel the pull to react, pause. Not to bottle the feeling up, but to look at it clearly. Ask yourself, what would a controlled response actually look like right now? That single question starts handing power back to you. Controlled responses rarely feel dramatic in the moment. They don't offer instant release, but they protect your position long-term. Emotional outbursts feel satisfying for a few seconds. Controlled responses build real leverage over time. This is exactly where most people lose the internal battle, choosing relief over respect, expression over effectiveness, short-term comfort over long-term command. A trained mind understands there are always two layers to any situation: the outside event and your inside response. You rarely control the first, you always control the second. Blur that line and you lose your leverage. Phrases like, "He made me angry," or "that situation forced my hand," sound ordinary, but they quietly hand away your power. When you credit outside forces for your internal state, you're accepting weakness without realizing it. Winning internally means dropping that language entirely. Nothing makes you react. You react because the pause hasn't been trained yet. And that pause can absolutely be built. At first, it'll feel awkward. You'll feel the pull to answer fast, defend yourself, explain, justify. That pull is actually the signal that training is happening, the same way sore muscles signal growth. Most people escape that discomfort instead of sitting with it. They distract themselves, rationalize their reactions, tell themselves, "That's just how I am." That sentence is a lie. Who you are isn't fixed. Who you are under pressure is something you've trained, intentionally or not. The inner game gets built through small, unglamorous repetitions. Not in dramatic moments, but in traffic, in minor arguments, in delays, in everyday misunderstandings. Those aren't distractions from the work. They are the work. If you can't hold your composure in small moments, you won't magically find it in big ones. This is why everything starts internally. Every time you pause instead of reacting, you build trust with yourself and reinforce a new identity. I'm someone who stays in control. That identity compounds. Over time, your body calms faster under pressure, your breathing steadies quicker, your thoughts scatter less. Not because life got easier, but because your internal bar rose. Standards are the backbone of this. A standard is a rule you keep regardless of your mood. I don't raise my voice to seem powerful. I don't rush decisions to escape discomfort. I don't explain myself when silence works better. These feel restrictive at first, but end up creating freedom. Freedom from emotional chaos, from regret, from being dragged into fights that don't matter. Winning internally also means picking your battles carefully. Not everything is worth your energy. Not every comment needs a reply. Not every disagreement needs your involvement. Untrained minds feel obligated to respond to everything. Trained minds are selective, and that selectivity is a form of strength. Stop reacting to everything, and your attention becomes genuinely valuable. Wherever your attention flows, your life tends to follow. Patience is another piece of this. Patience isn't passive waiting. It's holding control while time works things out. Impatient minds force outcomes, speak too soon, act too early, and expose weakness without meaning to. Patient minds observe patterns and choose their timing on purpose. Timing itself is a mental skill. The ability to wait without anxiety signals real internal stability, and that stability changes how people treat you. People unconsciously test boundaries. They sense reactivity and push harder. They sense calm and back off. That's not manipulation. That's just human nature. A stable inner world creates quiet authority, not the loud kind that demands attention, but the kind that earns respect through consistency. Consistent tone, consistent decisions, consistent behavior under pressure. Winning your inner game doesn't mean never feeling anything. It means emotion no longer runs your behavior. You can feel angry without acting on it. Feel scared without retreating. Feel uncertain without freezing. That separation is mastery. The goal was never to suppress what you feel. It's to stop feelings from hijacking your actions. Once that clicks, you stop trying to force calmness all the time and start focusing on staying controlled instead. Control is neutral, grounded, dependable. Remember this. Every external win was preceded by an internal one. Lose the inner battle, and no strategy saves you. Win it, and even setbacks become manageable. This is where it all starts. Not with confidence, not with hype, but with control. Up next, why discipline, not feelings, is the real backbone of mental strength, and why letting emotion drive is one of the fastest ways to lose. Chapter 2. Choose discipline. Over feelings, most people let their feelings run the show. They wake up, check in with how they feel, and let that answer decide what they will or won't do. That habit quietly wrecks lives. Feelings shift with sleep, food, stress, praise, rejection, and 100 things you don't control. Build your actions on that foundation, and your life becomes inconsistent by default. Discipline exists to fix exactly this. It's not about forcing yourself through gritted teeth. It's about removing the debate from moments where debate weakens you. A disciplined mind doesn't argue with itself over every action. It just follows the standard it already set. Untrained minds negotiate constantly. I'll do it later. I don't feel like it today. I'll wait until motivation shows up. Those negotiations seem harmless, but they slowly erode your self-trust. Every delay teaches your mind that comfort gets the final say. Once comfort takes charge, discipline falls apart. Here's the truth. Feelings are data, not orders. They tell you what's happening inside you. They don't tell you what to do next. Treat them as orders, and your behavior becomes unpredictable. Strong minds keep emotion and execution separate. They feel resistance and act anyway. They feel afraid and move forward anyway. They feel bored and stay consistent anyway. Not because they've gone numb, but because they've learned something most people never do. Progress doesn't run on motivation. It runs on standards. A standard is a rule you follow whether you feel like it or not. You don't brush your teeth only when inspired to. You don't stop at red lights based on your mood. Mental discipline works identically. You decide in advance who you are and how you'll act. Then you follow through regardless of the emotional weather. This cuts out friction. Instead of asking, "Do I feel like this?" you ask, "Does this match my standard?" That question alone simplifies everything. A huge chunk of emotional exhaustion comes from constant internal negotiation. indecision drains more than action ever does. Discipline quiets that noise. It makes your own behavior predictable, and predictability builds trust. Starting with trust in yourself. Self-trust is powerful. When you know you'll follow through, overthinking stops. You stop needing outside reassurance. You stop second-guessing every move, and you just act. That's why disciplined people look confident. They're not guessing who they'll be today. They already decided. Feelings still show up, but they no longer get a vote. This matters especially under pressure, because pressure turns the emotional volume way up. Fatigue makes discipline harder exactly when standards matter most. Under difficult conditions, you don't rise to your potential. You fall back to whatever level of discipline you've actually built. Weak discipline gets exposed by pressure. Strong discipline gets sharpened by it. Discipline gets misread as punishment far too often. People think of it as restriction and suffering. In reality, it creates freedom. Freedom from regret, from emotional whiplash, from constantly starting over. Every time you pick discipline over feeling, you strengthen your own internal authority. You teach your mind that action isn't optional, and standards aren't up for negotiation. That'll feel uncomfortable at first. Your mind will resist, look for excuses, exaggerate how tired or overwhelmed you are. That's normal. It's just the old pattern fighting to survive. The move isn't to fight the feeling. It's to acknowledge it without obeying it. That skill alone changes everything. Over time, the resistance quiets down, the internal debate shortens, and action gets easier. Not because your feelings improved, but because discipline took the lead. You stop relying on emotional highs to get things done. You get steady. Steady people win the long game. They don't burn out fast, and they don't vanish when things get tough. They don't need constant cheerleading. They just keep moving. That consistency builds momentum. Momentum reinforces identity, and identity feeds discipline right back. A loop that, once established, makes life simpler. Not easier, simpler. You stop asking how to feel better and start asking what needs doing. That shift is maturity. Discipline isn't about being harsh with yourself. It's about being reliable. Reliable to your goals, your standards, the person you're becoming. In any given moment, feelings will try to take the lead. Let discipline lead instead. Next up, how staying calm becomes a genuine edge, and why people who can hold their composure under pressure end up controlling outcomes that others can't touch. Chapter 3. Composure under pressure. Pressure doesn't create weakness. It exposes it. It doesn't change who you are. It reveals exactly how much training you've put in. Most people assume calm is either a personality trait or pure luck. That belief keeps them stuck. Calm isn't a trait, it's a skill, and skills can be trained. Under pressure, your body reacts before your mind does. Breathing gets shallow, muscles tense, thoughts speed up. Miss that early signal, and your mind loses control before you even notice. Once the body panics, the mind follows right behind it. That's why staying calm starts with awareness, not sheer willpower. You don't force calm into existence. You build the conditions that let it show up naturally. Untrained minds try to muscle through pressure, clenching, rushing, overriding every warning sign. That approach might hold up briefly before it collapses. Trained minds go the other direction. They slow the moment down, widen their focus instead of narrowing it, and stabilize before they act. That's not passive, it's strategic. Calm gives you options. panic strips them away. Speed can feel powerful in a stressful moment, but speed without clarity is dangerous. Most poor decisions happen fast, not thoughtfully. Calm lets you actually see what matters. While others rush around you, you can observe. While others get emotional, you stay neutral. And that neutrality becomes leverage, because pressure hits everyone, but not everyone handles it the same way. The ones who stay calm become the anchors, the decision makers. Not because they're louder, but because they're steadier. That steadiness reads as confidence to everyone around you, even while you're uncertain on the inside. Calm doesn't mean the absence of fear. It means fear doesn't get to run your behavior. You can feel pressure and still think clearly. Most people wait to feel calm before they act. That feeling rarely arrives on cue. Calm gets built through repeated exposure, not by avoiding stress. You train it by staying present inside the discomfort, not by escaping it. Small, controlled doses at a time. When something sets you off, that's not a failure. That's the training itself. Instead of reacting, pause. Instead of escalating, breathe. Instead of spiraling emotionally, ground yourself. Grounding is physical and practical. Slow your breath, drop your shoulders, unclench your jaw. Those small physical shifts tell your mind, we're not actually in danger. And once the body settles, the mind follows. This sequence matters. The body calms the mind under pressure, not the reverse. Telling yourself to just calm down while your body's still in fight or flight mode never works. You have to train from the outside in. Over time, your nervous system adjusts. What once felt overwhelming becomes something you can handle, not because the pressure vanished, but because your capacity for it grew. That capacity is genuine strength. People who can absorb pressure can absorb responsibility, complexity, and uncertainty too. That's why calm functions as a real competitive edge in business, relationships, conflict, and every decision you'll ever make. When everyone else loses their footing, you keep yours. When others speak without thinking, you choose your words. When others rush toward an outcome, you control the pace. And pace decides outcomes. Plenty of conflicts blow up simply because no one stayed calm long enough to diffuse them. Whoever stays calm ends up controlling the emotional temperature of the room. Quietly, but effectively. It changes how people around you behave. They slow down, mirror your tone, reconsider their approach. That's influence without force. Calm also protects you from regret. Most regret comes from emotional decisions, words said too fast, actions taken too soon. Staying calm buys you the space to act in line with your own values, and that alignment builds self-respect, which in turn strengthens your inner game. Over time, calm becomes your default. Not because life eased up, but because you stopped feeding urgency in the first place. Urgency is usually imagined. Pressure is usually exaggerated. A trained mind sees that clearly and understands that very few moments genuinely require an instant reaction. Most require patience. The ability to pause under pressure is among the highest forms of discipline there is. It's the line between being controlled and being in control. Calm isn't weakness. Calm is control. And control wins in nearly every scenario. Next, how uncontrolled reactions give away your power, and how mastering your response changes every interaction you have. Chapter 4. Take charge of your reactions. Reactions feel automatic, but they're actually habits. And like any habit, they can be retrained. Most people believe fast reactions equal honesty, that reacting quickly is a sign of authenticity. They're mixing up expression with strength. In reality, reacting is a form of surrender. The second you react without thinking, you hand control over to whatever triggered you. A comment, a delay, someone's tone, a surprise. That trigger becomes the leader, and you become the follower. Strong minds flip that dynamic. They don't try to erase reaction entirely. They delay it. And that delay is the exact difference between being provoked and being powerful. Reactions collapse the space between event and response. Responses preserve that space. Space allows for choice, and choice restores control, which is why the pause is so essential. When something triggers you, the instinct is to move fast, to answer, defend, explain, push back. Speed feels like strength in the moment. But under emotional pressure, speed is almost always a weakness dressed up as confidence. The pause feels uncomfortable precisely because it interrupts a familiar pattern. Your mind will push you. Say something now. Don't let this slide. You'll look weak if you wait. That pressure is a lie. Silence doesn't weaken your position. Losing control of your reaction does. People respect those who aren't easily rattled. They sense stability. They sense self-command. That's exactly why reactive people are so easy to manipulate. They broadcast their triggers openly. A trained mind keeps its triggers close. That doesn't mean going cold or disconnected. It means choosing deliberately when and how to engage. You don't have to win every exchange. You need to keep your composure. And composure changes the whole dynamic. When you don't react, people who expected resistance or emotion often escalate further, hoping for a response. And when it doesn't come, they lose their momentum and you gain it. That's not a manipulation tactic. It's just what naturally happens when self-control is present. Reactions also warp how you see reality. When emotions spike, perception narrows. You hear less, assume more, misread intentions. That's how arguments spiral. Two reactive minds create chaos together, while one controlled mind creates stability, and stability shifts outcomes. The goal isn't suppressing emotion. Suppression just builds pressure that leaks out later. The goal is observing emotion without acting on it, because observation loosens its grip. When you feel a reaction forming, name it internally: anger, defensiveness, impatience. Naming it creates distance, and distance restores your agency. Once agency is back, you get to choose a response that actually matches your standards. Sometimes the strongest move is no move at all, not out of avoidance or fear, but out of restraint. Restraint gets misunderstood as weakness when it's actually delayed power. Power used at the right moment beats power used immediately, every time. In conversations, at work, in conflict, in negotiation, those who react first give away the most information. Those who wait control the frame, and controlling the frame means controlling the outcome. Mastering your reactions also protects your energy. Every emotional reaction costs mental resources. Reactive people constantly run on empty, fighting battles that don't even matter. Controlled people save that energy for the things that do. And that conservation compounds into less regret, less stress, more clarity. Over time, your reactions naturally slow down, not from forced restraint, but because restraint becomes part of your identity. I'm someone who doesn't give power away. That identity is hard to destabilize, hard to rush, hard to provoke, and in a noisy world, that's a rare edge to have. take charge of your reactions, and you take charge of far more than just a moment. You take charge of your direction, your reputation, your outcomes. Next, how mental stamina gets built through discomfort, and how staying with difficulty forges strength that doesn't break. Chapter 5. Build mental stamina. Mental stamina isn't about going hard for a short burst. It's about staying steady when discomfort refuses to leave. Most people can push intensely for a little while. Very few can hold consistency when things stay uncomfortable for a long time. That difference is what decides outcomes. Mental stamina is the ability to stay steady when motivation dries up, when progress slows to a crawl, when effort feels unrewarded. This is exactly where most people quit, not because they physically can't continue, but because it's no longer comfortable to. The mind is wired to dodge discomfort. It seeks relief, distraction, an exit. When discomfort shows up, untrained minds read it as a warning. This isn't working. This is too hard. I should stop. Those thoughts feel convincing, but they're not the truth. They're just resistance. And resistance shows up whenever growth is actually starting. Stop every time resistance appears, and you're training your mind to retreat. Mental stamina is built by staying present inside discomfort instead of scrambling to escape it right away. Not by pushing endlessly, but by simply refusing to quit at the very first hint of unease. Discomfort has levels. Early discomfort is harmless. It's just your nervous system adapting to effort. Quit too early, and you teach your mind that effort itself is dangerous. Stay a little longer, and you teach it that effort is survivable. And that lesson compounds over time. Stamina isn't built through one heroic push. It's built through repeated exposure to mild discomfort you choose not to run from. This extends well beyond physical effort. Mental stamina shows up in your focus, patience, and ability to delay gratification. Can you stick with a hard task without constantly checking for relief? Tolerate boredom without reaching for a distraction? Keep going when progress feels invisible. These are all endurance tests. Modern life trains the opposite habits: instant feedback, constant entertainment, endless stimulation, which weakens your ability to sit with effort. A trained mind resists that pull, setting boundaries not because comfort is bad, but because unearned comfort quietly erodes resilience. Stamina is built by consistently choosing the harder option over the easier one that's right there. Staying focused instead of switching tasks, finishing instead of walking away, waiting instead of rushing. These choices look small, but they shape identity. I'm someone who stays. That identity changes how you meet challenges. Instead of asking, "How do I get out of this?" you start asking, "How do I stay steady here?" Staying steady doesn't mean ignoring your actual limits. It means learning to tell discomfort apart from real damage. Discomfort strengthens you. Damage weakens you. Most people confuse the two simply because they've never stayed long enough to find out which is which. Mental stamina also guards against emotional collapse. Once you're used to discomfort, emotional swings lose their grip. Stress becomes familiar. Pressure becomes something you can work with. That familiarity is calming. You stop panicking when things get heavy because you trust your own capacity to hold on. And that trust reduces anxiety, since anxiety thrives on uncertainty. Knowing you can stay with difficulty stops you fearing it. Stamina improves your decision-making too. Discomfort tends to push you toward rushed decisions. Stamina lets you wait instead, and waiting prevents mistakes. A lot of poor decisions come not from a lack of intelligence, but a lack of endurance. People simply couldn't tolerate uncertainty long enough to see the situation clearly. Someone with strong mental stamina can hold tension without rushing to resolve it, and that produces better outcomes. Over time, stamina resets your baseline. What once felt exhausting becomes ordinary, not because it got easier, but because you got stronger. That's a quiet transformation most people never experience simply because they quit too soon. Mental stamina doesn't chase praise or announce itself. It shows up as consistency, and consistency builds trust. Trust builds momentum. Momentum shifts the direction of your life. Once you've built it, you stop asking how long something will take and start committing to seeing it through. And that commitment simplifies everything. No more endless evaluation, no more bargaining with yourself, just presence, effort, continuation. It's not dramatic, it's reliable, and reliability outperforms raw intensity far more often than people expect. Stamina also reshapes your relationship with failure. Untrained minds treat failure as a stop sign. They personalize it fast. This proves I'm not good enough. This isn't for me. Those conclusions feel logical in the moment, but they're shortcuts. A mind with real stamina doesn't rush to assign meaning. It stays with the experience a little longer and separates the outcome from its identity. Failure becomes information, not a verdict. That distinction matters enormously. When failure attacks your identity, people quit to protect their ego. When failure is just data, people adjust and keep moving. Mental stamina lets you absorb setbacks without falling apart internally. You feel the disappointment without spiraling. Feel the frustration without abandoning the process. That emotional stability comes from repeated exposure to effort that didn't pay off right away. Over time, your nervous system learns. Setbacks are survivable. That lesson shrinks fear, and fear is what shrinks ambition, while stamina expands it. Silence is another overlooked piece of this. Many people find silence uncomfortable and fill it with noise, opinions, complaints, distractions. A mind with real stamina can sit in silence without getting agitated. And this matters more than it seems, because silence sharpens perception, reveals patterns, and clears out unnecessary thoughts. If you're constantly stimulated, your mind never strengthens its ability to hold focus. Stamina includes being able to sit with your own thoughts instead of escaping them, which is why disciplined routines matter so much. Simple routines cut down decision fatigue and reduce the mental cost of choosing over and over. Predictable effort builds stamina faster. Because you're not burning energy deciding whether to keep going, continuing just becomes the default. This also guards against burnout, which people often mistake for exhaustion when it's actually inconsistency. Starting hard, stopping abruptly, restarting with guilt. That cycle drains you faster than steady effort ever could. Mental stamina breaks that cycle by favoring pace over bursts, consistency over extremes. A steady pace that's actually sustainable. This matters enormously for anything long-term. Careers, relationships, personal growth. If your mind isn't trained to sit with boredom, frustration, and slow progress, you'll keep sabotaging yourself. Stamina also teaches humility. Stay with something long enough and you realize how much you genuinely don't control. A grounding realization that reduces arrogance and impatience. You stop demanding instant results and and start respecting the process. And process thinking is a mark of maturity. Immature minds ask, "What do I get out of this today?" Enduring minds ask, "Who am I becoming through this?" A question that shifts your priorities entirely. You stop chasing short-term validation and start building long-term capacity. And capacity beats raw talent. Talent without stamina is wasted potential. Stamina without talent still produces results. That's why stamina levels the playing field. It lets ordinary people produce extraordinary outcomes simply by staying in the game longer than others are willing to. Most competition disappears when your stamina is high. Not because others are weak, but because they opt out. They choose comfort, distraction, relief. You choose to stay, and staying rewrites your identity. I don't quit when it gets uncomfortable. I don't need instant reward. I can handle this. Those beliefs become self-fulfilling. Your tolerance grows, your confidence steadies, your reactions soften. Mental stamina also improves your patience with other people. Tolerate internal discomfort well, and external frustration loses its edge. You become less reactive to delays, mistakes, imperfections. That makes you easier to work with, stronger as a leader, calmer in conflict. People feel safe around those who aren't easily shaken, and that safety builds real influence. Influence that comes not from force, but from steadiness. Steadiness is what stamina looks like in action. Keep this in mind as you go. Stamina gets built quietly. Nobody applauds consistency. Nobody celebrates patience. But life rewards it relentlessly. Those who can stay present, stay disciplined, stay engaged, outlast the people who rely on intensity alone. Mental stamina isn't flashy. It's effective. And effectiveness is what actually wins over time. Next, how clarity becomes possible even inside chaos. Once your mind is trained to filter out the noise. Chapter 6. Clear thinking inside chaos. Chaos itself doesn't ruin outcomes. Confusion does. Most people assume chaos means disorder happening around them. Too many tasks, too many opinions, too much information. In reality, chaos only becomes dangerous once it gets inside your head. A chaotic environment can still be navigated by a clear mind. A calm environment is useless to a scattered one. This is why clarity isn't about your conditions. It's about your training. Untrained minds respond to chaos by speeding up, rushing decisions, multitasking, consuming more information, hoping clarity will just appear. It never does. More input without structure just creates more noise. A trained mind does the opposite. As chaos rises, it slows down, cuts inputs, and narrows focus. It simplifies. That single ability separates the people who survive pressure from the people who fold under it. Clear thinking isn't really about intelligence. It's about restraint. Restraint from reacting to everything, from trying to fix everything at once, from mistaking urgency for actual importance. Chaos manufactures false urgency. Suddenly everything feels critical and time-sensitive and demanding of attention. But attention is finite. Spread it across everything and nothing gets it fully. Clear thinkers guard their attention aggressively, understanding that you can't think clearly while your mind keeps switching targets. Switching feels productive, but it fragments thought. Fragmented thought produces shallow decisions, and shallow decisions compound into real problems. Clarity needs depth. Depth needs focus. Focus needs elimination. And elimination is uncomfortable because it means saying no. No to distractions, no to unnecessary opinions, no to tasks that feel busy but add nothing. Untrained minds avoid elimination out of fear. What if I miss something important? That fear feels responsible, but it just keeps the mind stuck. Clear thinkers accept something different. You can't eliminate every risk, but you can eliminate noise. And most information out there doesn't actually change your decision. It just creates anxiety. A trained mind asks one simple question. What's the one thing that matters most right now? Not 5 things, 1. That question slices through chaos immediately. Once the priority is clear, everything else becomes secondary, not irrelevant, just not now. This kind of sequencing is powerful, because chaos overwhelms people who treat everything as happening simultaneously. Clear thinkers work sequentially. One action, one decision, one problem at a time. That lowers your cognitive load, and lower cognitive load means better judgment. And judgment is exactly what chaos tests. Under pressure, the brain reaches for shortcuts, emotion, bias, habit. Without training, those shortcuts lead straight into predictable mistakes. Clear thinkers slow down just enough to sidestep those traps. They don't rush to conclusions, don't fill gaps with assumptions, and ask fewer, sharper questions. What do I actually know? What am I assuming? What can I actually control right now? Questions like these ground your thinking, and grounded thinking stabilizes action. Emotional regulation is another key piece of clarity in chaos. Strong emotion distorts perception. Fear inflates threats. Anger narrows your options. Excitement hides risk. Let emotions run unchecked and clarity disappears. Again, this isn't about suppressing feeling. It's about not letting feeling dictate your interpretation of reality. A trained mind can acknowledge a feeling without letting it define what's real. I feel pressure, but this is manageable. I feel uncertain, but I don't need to decide yet. That internal language matters. Language shapes perception, and perception shapes decisions. Dramatic self-talk produces dramatic thinking. Grounded self-talk produces grounded thinking. Chaos also tests patience. When a situation is unclear, the urge to act spikes. Action feels like control, but premature action often deepens the chaos. Clear thinkers understand timing. They know when to move and when to wait. Waiting isn't passive. It's active observation. And observation reveals patterns that clarify direction. Rushing skips that step entirely. Most mistakes don't come from bad intentions or lack of effort. They come from acting before clarity has actually formed. Clear thinking respects that process. It tolerates ambiguity without panicking. Tolerating ambiguity is rare. Most people crave certainty and want answers immediately. When certainty isn't available, they invent it, telling themselves comforting stories that ease the discomfort but often lead to error. Clear thinkers resist that pull and stay neutral longer. And neutrality produces accuracy, which produces better outcomes. Mental decluttering matters here too. Outer chaos often mirrors inner clutter. Too many unresolved tasks, unfinished thoughts, open loops. Every open loop drains attention. Clear minds close loops deliberately. Writing things down, externalizing information, not relying on memory under stress. That frees up mental space, and that space is essential for clarity. An overloaded mind makes even simple decisions feel heavy. Cutting the load restores agility. Clarity also depends on your values. Unclear values make decisions complicated. Clear values simplify them. A trained mind knows its priorities. What matters, what doesn't, what's non-negotiable. These internal rules act like filters, automatically removing options. Without filters, everything feels equally important. With them, choices narrow fast and chaos loses its grip. Clear thinking is also physically supported. Poor sleep, bad nutrition, and chronic stress degrade clarity significantly. Mental training includes respecting your body, not perfectly, but consistently. A stable body supports a stable mind. Ignore that, and you're manufacturing unnecessary chaos. Clear thinkers don't rely on willpower alone. They design environments that support clarity. Fewer distractions, real routines, protected focus. That's not rigidity. It's design, and design keeps chaos from taking over. Over time, clarity becomes second nature. You notice chaos earlier, respond more deliberately, and make fewer impulsive calls. Others might feel overwhelmed around you while you stay steady, not because you know more, but because you think better. Clear thinking doesn't erase difficulty. It makes difficulty navigable, letting you move forward without losing your direction. In chaotic moments, the calmest mind usually wins, not because it's fastest, but because it sees clearly. And clarity is one of the strongest edges you can ever train into yourself. Chapter 7. Reprogram your self-talk. The voice inside your head never really stops talking. It narrates your actions, explains away your failures, predicts your future. Most people never question it. They just assume it's telling them the truth. That assumption quietly shapes an entire life. Your self-talk isn't just commentary, it's instruction. It tells your nervous system how to respond, tells your mind what to focus on, tells your body whether to tense up or relax. Weak, chaotic, or hostile self-talk, and your behavior follows suit. Training this isn't about staying positive, it's about being precise. Untrained self-talk is emotional. It exaggerates, generalizes, dramatizes. I always mess this up. This is impossible. I'm just not built for this. Those phrases feel natural, but they poison effort before it even starts. A trained mind avoids absolutes. It speaks in instructions instead. This is uncomfortable, not dangerous. This requires patience. Focus on the next step. That difference matters, because the mind follows language. Unstable language creates an unstable mind. Most people try to change their behavior without ever touching the internal language driving it. And that rarely sticks, because behavior obeys identity, and identity gets reinforced by self-talk. Tell yourself repeatedly that you're reactive, and you'll react. Tell yourself you're disciplined, and you'll start noticing disciplined behavior in yourself. This isn't affirmation, it's conditioning. Your mind believes what you repeat, especially under stress. Since stress lowers your filters and reveals your default programming. That's exactly why self-talk needs training before pressure arrives. You don't magically rise to positive thinking under stress. You fall back on whatever language you've rehearsed. A lot of untrained self-talk is actually inherited. Phrases picked up from parents, teachers, peers, old failures. They feel true because they're familiar, but familiarity isn't accuracy. Accuracy requires intention. The first step in retraining self-talk is noticing tone, not content. Is your inner voice harsh, impatient, defeated, panicky? Tone sets your emotional direction. Harsh tone creates tension. Urgent tone creates panic. Defeated tone drains you. A trained inner voice is neutral and firm, not kind, not cruel, just clear. And clear language produces clear action. Instead of, "This is overwhelming." A trained voice says, "This is complex. Break it down." Instead of, "I can't deal with this," it says, "Handle the next piece." Small shifts, but they're not trivial. They redirect your attention. Self-talk tells your mind where to look. Dramatic language searches for an exit. Instructional language searches for execution, and execution builds momentum. Another common trap is using self-talk to judge your own worth. "I should be further along by now. Other people handle this better." Comparison undermines self-command. A trained mind separates performance from identity. You don't insult yourself over a mistake. You correct the behavior. Correction moves you forward. Insult just stalls you. Internal put-downs don't motivate. They exhaust. Your mind can't lead itself while it's under constant attack. Training self-talk means becoming your own authority, not your own critic. Authority sets standards. Criticism breeds fear, and fear distorts thinking. Strong self-talk is directive, not emotional. It doesn't ask, "How do I feel?" It asks, "What's required?" Requirements are objective. Feelings aren't. This matters especially after a setback. Untrained self-talk spirals. "I knew this would happen. Why do I always do this? What's wrong with me?" Questions with no useful answer. A trained mind asks different ones. What actually failed? What needs adjusting? What stays the same? These generate learning, and learning prevents repeating the same mistake. Repetition without learning is just discouragement. Learning without emotional overload is progress. Self-talk also determines resilience. When things go wrong, your inner voice either escalates the situation or stabilizes it. Escalating language piles on pressure. "I'm behind," while stabilizing language creates space. "I have time to make the right call." Space allows better decisions, and a trained mind protects that internal space even when time is tight externally. Consistency is another piece. Plenty of people talk to themselves differently depending on their mood, encouraging one day, defeated the next. And that inconsistency creates instability. A trained inner voice stays consistent. It doesn't swing wildly or renegotiate its own standards. It sounds the same on a good day and a bad one, and that reliability builds trust. Trust your inner voice, and you act faster. You stop doubting yourself mid-action. Stop needing outside reassurance. That independence is real strength. Self-talk also shapes how you read other people. A defensive inner voice perceives threats everywhere. A grounded one perceives information. That difference runs deep into your relationships. A lot of conflict is fueled by internal narratives, not actual events. Training your self-talk cuts down on unnecessary conflict by reducing misinterpretation. You stop assuming intent and start responding to facts. And that clarity improves how you communicate. Silence matters here too. A trained inner voice knows when not to speak. Not every thought deserves airtime. You don't need to comment on every sensation, doubt, or impulse. Silence creates focus, while an overactive inner narrator creates distraction. A trained mind uses language sparingly, speaking when direction is genuinely needed and staying quiet when the action is already clear. That restraint conserves energy, and energy saved internally becomes energy available for actually doing things. Over time, trained self-talk becomes automatic. You stop consciously correcting every phrase. The tone just shifts naturally, the result of repeated correction. Replacing weak phrases again and again, interrupting exaggeration repeatedly. choosing precision over drama until precision becomes the default. This changes how pressure actually feels. It stops triggering panic and starts triggering instruction. What's the move? What matters most? What stays under control? That mindset is powerful because in every situation, the voice in your head sets the ceiling on your behavior. Scattered voice, scattered you. Steady voice, steady you. Training your self-talk is training leadership. Leadership over your attention, your emotion, your action. Once that leadership is in place, outside chaos loses much of its grip. The world can stay loud and uncertain, but internally you're directed. You know what to do and how to respond. Not because someone told you, but because your own mind speaks clearly. That clarity is earned, and it's one of the most powerful forms of mental strength you'll ever build. Chapter 8. Show up regardless. Most people don't fail from a lack of talent. They fail because they vanish. They vanish when motivation fades, when progress stalls, when effort stops feeling exciting. Showing up is the rarest skill there is. It sounds simple. It isn't. Showing up means acting without waiting for emotional permission. It means continuing without reassurance, staying engaged even without an immediate payoff. Untrained minds wait for alignment, waiting to feel ready, waiting for clarity, confidence, or motivation to show up first. Those states are unreliable. A trained mind doesn't wait. It moves on schedule, and schedule beats mood every single time. Show up consistently, and you remove the decision-making entirely. There's no debate, no negotiation, no asking whether today feels right. You just act, because this is what you do. That consistency builds identity, and identity is far more durable than motivation. Motivation fluctuates, identity holds. Once you see yourself as someone who shows up, skipping starts to feel wrong and quitting starts to feel foreign. That internal pressure is actually healthy. It replaces outside discipline with an internal expectation. Showing up also builds self-respect. Every time you follow through, you reinforce trust in yourself. And self-trust is foundational. Without it, confidence caves under pressure. With it, you act decisively. Decisiveness isn't certainty. It's commitment. And showing up is what trains commitment. You commit to putting in the effort without knowing the outcome, and that willingness is rare. Most people want guarantees before they invest, proof before they act. But life doesn't work that way. Progress rewards participation, not certainty. And the people who show up without guarantees eventually gain real leverage because consistency compounds. Small, repeated efforts create momentum, and momentum makes action easier. Once momentum exists, continuing takes less effort than stopping does. Stopping breaks your rhythm. Restarting costs energy. That's why showing up gets easier the less you interrupt it. Untrained minds underestimate this. They assume one missed day doesn't matter. Sometimes it doesn't. But frequent interruptions prevent the compounding effect entirely. A trained mind protects continuity over perfection. You don't need flawless execution, you need repeated presence. Presence builds familiarity. Familiarity reduces resistance. And resistance is the main thing standing in your way. Resistance shows up when effort feels forced, and effort feels forced when it's inconsistent. Once something becomes routine, resistance fades, which is exactly why disciplined routines matter. They remove emotion from the equation entirely. You don't decide, you just execute. and execution is far easier than decision-making, which drains a lot of energy. Showing up also reshapes your relationship with boredom. Boredom isn't the enemy, it's the entry point. It shows up once novelty fades, and most people read boredom as a signal to stop. A trained mind reads it as a signal of depth, and depth is exactly where mastery forms. Once the surface-level distractions fade, what's left is the actual work. And staying with work that's no longer exciting is how skill actually deepens across every domain: work, training, relationships, personal growth. People who leave the moment boredom hits stay average. People who stick around move past it. Showing up also builds humility. You stop expecting constant excitement, stop demanding emotional payoff, and accept that progress is usually quiet. Quiet progress is sustainable. Loud progress grabs attention but tends to burn out fast. A trained mind prefers the quiet kind. It values stability over praise, and that preference protects focus, protects quality, and quality eventually compounds into reputation, which opens doors. None of that happens, though, if you don't actually show up. Showing up strengthens emotional regulation, too. Act consistently, and your emotions lose their grip on your behavior. You feel tired and act anyway, feel uncertain and act anyway, feel unmotivated and act anyway. That builds real resilience, and resilience shrinks fear, since fear thrives on avoidance. Avoid showing up, and fear grows. Show up anyway, and fear shrinks, not through bravery, but through exposure. Repeated exposure teaches your nervous system that the action is safe. Safety lowers anxiety, and lower anxiety improves performance, which reinforces confidence, which encourages more showing up. It's a loop, and it's a powerful one. Turning effort into habit, habit into identity, identity into results. Showing up also simplifies long-term goals. Instead of fixating on the outcome, you focus on attendance. Did I show up today? Yes or no? That question is fully within your control, unlike outcomes. This shift lowers pressure. Pressure often paralyzes, while attendance frees action. You stop obsessing over results and start investing in the process. And process thinking is mature thinking that reduces emotional volatility and supports both patience and stamina. It also changes how others see you. People trust consistency and trust those who show up reliably. Reliability builds credibility. Credibility creates influence. Influence creates opportunity. And opportunities usually go to the people who've proven they won't disappear. Talent gets attention. Consistency earns responsibility, and responsibility leads to growth. This holds across every domain. Consistent people get promoted at work, trusted in relationships, and genuinely transformed through personal development, not overnight, but permanently. Showing up also removes excuses. Excuses thrive on inconsistency. I missed yesterday, so today doesn't matter. And that logic only works if showing up was optional in the first place. Make it non-negotiable, and excuses lose their power entirely. You stop explaining and justifying and just act. That simplicity is genuinely freeing. It removes internal conflict, and conflict drains energy, while conserved energy is energy you can actually apply. Over time, showing up stops being something you force and just becomes who you are. At that point, discipline feels lighter, not because the effort dropped, but because the resistance did. Life doesn't get easier. You get steadier, and steadiness is underrated. Steady people aren't flashy. They're effective. They don't spike and crash. They progress, and progress compounds. Years of consistent showing up produce results that look sudden to anyone who wasn't watching. From the outside, it looks like overnight success. From the inside, it feels inevitable. And that inevitability was earned. Showing up no matter what isn't dramatic and doesn't feel heroic. It feels ordinary. That's exactly where its power comes from. Ordinary actions, repeated, produce extraordinary stability. And stability is one of the greatest advantages you can have in an unpredictable world. You can't control every situation or every outcome, but you can control this. Whether you show up, and the people who keep showing up end up winning far more often than the people who don't. Closing. The system never really ends. You've reached the end of this material, but the actual work is just getting started. What you've gone through isn't theory or hype. It's a training framework, a way of operating when life applies pressure. Most people look for answers outside themselves. Better circumstances, better timing, better motivation. But the real edge has always been internal control. Control over your reactions, your attention, your behavior when emotions are running high. The 8 principles covered: mastering your inner world, choosing discipline over feelings, staying calm under pressure, taking charge of your reactions, building mental stamina, thinking clearly in chaos, reprogramming your self-talk, and showing up no matter what, aren't separate ideas. They reinforce one another, forming a single system designed to keep you steady in situations that break other people. This system doesn't require exceptional talent or perfection. It demands consistency. Consistency in how you respond, how you think, how you show up. That consistency becomes identity, and identity outlasts motivation every time. Going forward, don't try to apply all 8 at once. That's not how training works. Pick one principle and practice it on purpose. Notice when emotion tries to take the lead, when urgency tries to rush you, when discomfort tries to push you away. Those moments are the training. Instead of resisting them, use them. Pause, breathe, choose. That sequence creates space, and in that space, control comes back to you. You don't need to eliminate pressure. It's unavoidable. You need to grow your capacity for it. And capacity is what lets you carry more responsibility, more uncertainty, more challenge without losing your clarity. That's mental strength. Quiet, unannounced, showing up in decisions that don't need justifying. In restraint when giving in would have been easier. In consistency when quitting would have felt reasonable. Those choices compound, not dramatically, but reliably. And reliability beats intensity more often than not. If there's one thing to hold on to, it's this. You don't win by waiting for perfect conditions. You win by becoming the kind of person who stays in control inside imperfect ones. That control isn't handed to you. It's trained. Train your mind daily, not just when it's convenient, but when it actually matters. When emotions rise, when pressure builds, when outcomes are uncertain. Those are the moments that decide everything. As you step back into your day-to-day life, remember, you won't control every situation, but you always control your response. And controlling your response means controlling your direction. That's how winning genuinely happens. Not by chance, not by luck, by training. One last thing before you go. This isn't something you complete once. It's something you maintain. Just like physical strength fades without upkeep, mental strength weakens the moment discipline disappears. Some days everything will feel aligned, other days nothing will. The point of training was never to eliminate bad days. It's to stop bad days from controlling your behavior. This is exactly where most people slide backward. They train when life is calm and abandon structure the moment life turns chaotic. But chaos is precisely when training matters most. When routines break, when pressure spikes, when emotions get loud. That's when you return to fundamentals, control your breath, slow your reactions, simplify your decisions, show up anyway. You don't need to do more. You need to keep doing what actually works. This kind of training is cumulative. Every small act of discipline adds another layer of resilience. Every moment of restraint strengthens your internal authority. Every time you show up without waiting for emotional permission, you reinforce an identity that will carry you through the moments when motivation is nowhere to be found. There will be stretches where no one sees the effort, no one praises the restraint, no one notices the consistency. And that's normal. This kind of strength is built in private. The reward isn't applause, it's stability. Stability in how you think, how you act, how you handle pressure. And that stability changes how life responds back to you. People trust you more. Situations feel less overwhelming. Decisions get cleaner, not because the world got softer, but because you got sharper, more grounded, without becoming rigid. So the next time you're tested, and you will be, remember, you're not behind, you're not failing, you're training. Return to the fundamentals, apply them quietly, and keep moving forward. That's how control becomes second nature. And once control is second nature, winning stops feeling rare and starts feeling repeatable.